Hello boxing fans, welcome to another episode of Boxing 396. Today I'm having a conversation with Brittany Rogers, the youngest female boxing promoter. She accomplished that feat back in September 30th, 2011. Her promotional company, BAM Boxing, has been making waves in the boxing community here in Philadelphia, in the US, and worldwide. How you doing, Brittany?
I'm good, really good. Tough getting parking down here, but other than that, good. How about you?
Good. Talk to me about boxing. I met you as an intern in 2008 at the legendary Blue Horizon.
Yes.
You were at Temple. You were an intern working for Verdejo Michael's Blue Horizon Promotions. Talk to me about that experience and what led you to transition to starting your own promotional company.
Well, it actually started a little bit before that.
Okay.
So I would say it started more or less me being up Front Street Gym, just hanging out, training here and there with some of the guys that were up there. And that was probably in like 2007.
2007.
And then in 2008, I had a long talk with my father and Sonny McCourt, who was training me at the time. And
you were actually training to be a fighter?
Yes.
Okay.
And my dad was kind of really against it. He didn't like it, and I wanted to make him happy. I am a daddy's girl through and through, which I think everybody that knows me and my father in this business knows that. So I sat up one night on one of the benches in there, and me and Sonny were there all night, and I was just talking to him like, you know, I really love this, I really want to get involved, but he doesn't want me in the ring. You know, what do you think I should do? And Sonny knew that at the time I was living 2 blocks from the Blue Horizon. Okay. And he was the one that told me, go in and ask for an internship. Just ask. I said, all right. So I went in, and when I first went in, it was kind of difficult. At first I was told that there were no internships available because I wasn't in a spot at Temple where I'd be getting credit for it.
Okay.
So Vernoka let me come in and do a more or less like a volunteership. Okay. And once me and her got along really well, and Don started coming in all the time, and
Don Elbaum.
Yes. And you know, I started really learning a lot from him when it comes to matchmaking, and you know, kind of taught me how to keep things organized, because when Don called and asked for this or asked for that, I had to know where it was. I started interacting with certain fighters at that time, and I really liked it. And one day I came into work, and she told me she's closing up. Okay. And that was it.
That was 2010.
Yeah, and I was kind of taken back. I was like, okay, now what do I do? At the time I was still hanging out up at Front Street a lot, not training really much. I was more or less just going in and kind of seeing what was going on. And I reached out to Anthony Boyle, because he's a very close friend of my father and very close friend of my family, and I asked his opinion. And he said, why don't you come with me to the Briscoe Awards that October. Okay. I think it was in October at the time.
It was.
And he said, you know, I'll introduce you to Russell Peltz. So, all right, sounds good. So I went, and I knew Russell was a Temple alum, so I wore my Temple sweatshirt.
Okay, good move.
Just in case I needed something to talk about. So I went in, and, you know, he introduced me, and at first Russell he was talking, but not much. And then he started asking me about Philly Keith's forums, when he used to have them running all the time. And he asked me if I knew who BAM was. And right then and there I was like, that's me. And we talked all night, and he offered me an internship on the spot, and I started my senior internship with him. And midway through the internship he asked me, he said, so when are you going to run your own show? And I was kind of like, what do you mean, run my own show? And then he's like, well, you know what you're doing. I'll be here, I'll help you out. You know, just do what you need to do, go through the paperwork, and we'll get it together. So I did, and you know, he kind of was my mentor through the whole thing, which, as everybody in the business knows, he still is. But he really walked me through that first show and helped me a lot. And I learned more in that first show and my second show than I've probably learned in almost every other show combined.
Talk to me about your first show. You're a senior at Temple, September 30th, 2011.
Yes.
National Guard Armory. On that show, you have the new Ray Robinson. You have Julian Williams fighting in his 9th fight.
Yes.
You have Charles Hayward. You have Todd Unthankme making his professional debut. Talk to me, how were you able to pull that together?
You know, at the time, Ray had just gotten out of a contract with Star Boxing, and he had been sitting on the shelf for a long time, and he was somebody that I had a good relationship with and was willing to work with me the same way I was willing to work with him.
Okay.
And I went through the legwork of finding somebody that would fight him. I made the fight, put it all together, and then I started saying, okay, you know, who can I put on the undercard? With Julian, I started going down shoulders at the time, and I ran into Breadman a couple times, and he kind of...
Stephen Edwards,
yes.
his manager, trainer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he put the bug in my ear and said, you know, why don't you put us on? And he was with Gary Shaw at the time.
Right.
And we went through it, and, you know, it took a long time to find Julian an opponent because nobody wanted to fight him. But he ended up being in probably what was, I would consider, the fight of the night that night. And, you know, he had a good crowd there, and the two of them really carried the show. Todd ended up getting on the card. I think he has a fight coming up March 5th in DC.
Right, he's now signed with Golden Boy.
Yes. Todd ended up getting on the show. I was really working a lot with Doc at the time.
Okay, his manager.
And his former manager. And Doc was, I think he had a couple kids on that show. He had DeCarlo Perez. I'm not sure if they were signed at the time or not, but I know that he was somewhat involved. And that's kind of where things just started coming together. These were guys that I was dealing with a lot through Russell's office outside of Ray and Julian. So the undercard kind of came together that way. I had another kid, Chase Corbin, who was...
Chase Corbin, he was 5-0. I know he moved out to California.
Yeah, and I don't think he's fighting anymore, but he was on the show. He's another one that I just kind of walked in fast lane. He was kind of sitting there, and we just kind of put it all together. And I lived up to my end. I told people that who wanted to get a fight, we got them fights. And, you know, when I needed, not even needed, but when I wanted them to be proud of the show that they were on and support the show that they were on and not just come in and say, hey, I'm getting a fight, they went out. I had every single kid that fought that night sold tickets. Every single person was, you know, interactive with the event itself.
I was at ringside, and it was a great show. Talk to me about being a pioneer in the boxing world. I turn on television. I see all these great fights, 24 hours, great boxing matches, but absent are the women fighters. I'm in Marion Anderson gym, and every day people walk through this gym. I've had women come to the gym every day, and they go, do you train women? And I look at them with a blank stare. I train boxers.
You don't think about it.
I don't think about it. But let's talk about women in boxing, and why aren't we seeing some of the great female fighters on television?
You know, I think it's a matter of people or promoters not wanting to take the risk so much. And on top of that, the fact that there's not as many female fighters. I know that they are around, don't get me wrong, but female fighters don't have the luxury that male fighters have, in a sense of, I don't want to fight this person, I don't want to fight that person, because a male fighter can have 10 people to pull from, and a female has maybe 2 or 3. Okay. And, you know, you could be fighting your pro debut as a female, and you're fighting somebody who's 5-3 or 3-5, or, you know, and that's common as a female. And, you know, I think it's really difficult to market that to the general public, because they're so used to seeing these male fighters that are undefeated, and, you know, if you're fighting in the main event, chances are you're either undefeated or your opponent's undefeated. And I think that once, you know, it's very rare to have a female that can make it, you know, to even 10-0, just because you're fighting people that are outside of your experience. just because there's not enough other females around. So I think that that's where the market gets a little hard to get out to the general public, for them to actually understand, you know, just because somebody's 3-5 or 5-3 doesn't make them a bad fighter. It just means that, you know, maybe they fought better opposition, or maybe they were in tougher fights. You know, it's hard when you have a general sports fan getting interested in boxing, because they automatically kind of go with what the national scene has. And, you know, somebody like Floyd Mayweather, like, he's done great things for the sport. But if he was, you know, 50-5, it'd be a little bit different for these guys that are coming up and girls coming up.
How much do you see, me as a Jamaican, as an immigrant, and as a black person, regardless of where I've been in life, I've been to accounting firms, I've worked for a bank, and there were hardly any African American there. Always felt it was my job to make sure there were more. And by the time I leave, there are more. How do you feel? Is that part of your mantra as a promoter who happens to be a woman? Because I spoke to Miss Michaels, Vernoka Michaels, Diane Fisher, and they say we're always going to put women on our card, because if we don't do it, the men aren't going to do it.
You know, and I don't want to say I'm the opposite, because I'm not by no means against women being in the ring. However, I see other male promoters put females on the card. Okay. For example, Heather Hardy wouldn't be who she is without her promoter.
Right.
Now, in turn, you know, we had spoken a little bit, I'm not sure if it was before the interview or now.
Benny Briscoe wouldn't be who he is without his promoter.
Correct. But in a sense of, I don't think about it. I don't say, hey, I'm going to slide out this card and I have to have 2 females on the card.
Okay.
I slide it out, and whatever makes sense is going to happen. Now, if I could put 2 kids in that are both from Philly in a 4-round fight, or have a girl from Philly in a 4-round fight fighting a girl from California, it doesn't make sense on my end. It doesn't make sense for me to put out the money just to bring a female in, because when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of the show, it's got to make sense for my budget. Now, if there were 2 girls in Philly or in New York, you know, somewhere where they can drive in and we can make the fight, I'm all for it.
No, I see your point as a promoter who started, but I'm looking at the big budget promoters who have huge budgets and TV budgets. If I had the budget,
then yeah, I would definitely try to give it more exposure, because I think women's sports doesn't get the exposure that it should, period. And I think that as much as this is a solo sport, when you sit down and you watch a fight at nighttime, you're not sitting down and watching one fight. There's always 2 or 3 that you're watching throughout the night. So if you're a boxing fan and you're sitting down and you're watching the fights, and you can have a female fight in there, it would benefit women's sports, because it's intertwined with the male sport. It's not like you're sitting down and watching a WNBA game. You know, it kind of, you're not specific to just watching the females or just watching the males. You
know, I'm frustrated because the best welterweight champion, Cecilia Brækhus, 27-0, 7 knockouts. The only unified, undisputed champion, WBA, WBO, IBF, WBC champion, and we don't get to see her in America. She's the best welterweight champion, male or female. I watched the Olympics, and the only boxing I watched during the Olympics was Clarissa Shields.
She's phenomenal.
Because I just thought she was just better than all the men, including Errol Spence. And people say, why do you say that? Everyone on the USA boxing team, if you covered the head, they all fought the same. They all fought the same. She was just different. And
stood out.
She stood out. And Clarissa Shields is the only person that I watched during the Olympic boxing. So for me, I don't care if it's a man or a woman. I just like seeing good boxing. And I think in the U.S., in Mexico and Europe, in Mexico, on every card, there's a female fight. But in the U.S., and the huge promoters, they're not putting them on. And I've been in the room where promoters have said, women shouldn't be boxing. Really?
I don't feel that way. I don't think that they shouldn't be boxing, but you know, I don't want to say I don't pay attention to it because that's not the right wording. However, if it makes more sense for two men to be fighting, I don't feel like women should be put on just because they're women. It should be, they should have proven themselves, they should be at the same caliber that these men are at, and for somebody that is on that caliber, then they should be treated the same way.
Alicia Ashley became the oldest world champion. She, at 48 years old and 67 days, she beat Bernard Hopkins by 14 days. She's a two-time world champion, or a three-time. Alicia Slick Ashley. She just happens to be Jamaican. She regained her championship back in October. When we talk about the caliber, I look at guys and I look at people and I look at the fights that are on TV. Nobody can make a compelling argument that there are 100 fighters or 50 fighters better than Alicia Ashley or Cecilia Brækhus, but they're not on TV. It's not because they're not good, it's because men dominate boxing and men don't want to put women on TV.
Not even just inside the ring, but outside the ring it's the same way. For the people, for the women that are involved in the sport, I mean, there's only one woman in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And although she was one of a kind, I mean, the women, there are women behind the scenes that are, you know, the ones that are kind of in motion making these events happen and aren't getting the recognition that they should. It's just a matter of, you know, over time, hopefully things change, and the only way that they're going to change is if women continue to do what they're doing and keep making an impact. And, you know, if they don't and the men keep doing what they're doing and they keep getting more recognition, you know, women have to start to decide, you know, is it worth it?
But the question, and I don't mean to harp on this, why are we so behind the times in the U.S.?
I don't think they even know about half the women fighter out there.
We're so we're behind the times in the U.S.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't think that you can go to some of the bigger promoters and say, hey, why don't you put this woman on, because one, it's a matter of them being educated on some of these women fighters, and I think that that's more or less the bigger problem, because I don't think it's a matter of this day and age, at least I like to think that it's not that they don't want them on, it's more or less that they don't know that they're out there. They don't pay attention because everybody harps on the rankings that the men are fighting in 10 times more. I mean, you don't even see it, the women's rankings being published anywhere practically, ever. So I think it's a matter of them not being educated about the women fighters that are out there.
I think it's a matter of them don't want to be educated. I think it's a matter of them discriminating. I think it's a matter of them don't care. But I also think it's a matter of them making stupid business decisions, because when you think about it, what is it, 50% of our population are women? It just makes good business sense to promote women boxing.
Yeah, I mean, you see it in some other sports and they've done great with it.
You know, I used to hear this at the accounting firm, and I don't mean to put them, we can't find black accountants. You can't find them because you don't want to find them. So let me go find them. We can't find a black, no, you don't care. You don't want to look, you don't care. But that's not they're there. And I don't mean to harp on this, but for me, I was so overjoyed that you became a promoter, because I believe we need to see more women promoters, more women referees, more women judges, more women boxers. And the only way it's going to change, and I'll say this to you, the only way it's going to change if someone like yourself get to the stature of a Bob Arum and say, I'm going to change it.
Right. You
get to the stature of a Bob Arum or a Floyd Mayweather or Dan Goosen, or Goosen Tudor, Dan's no longer with us, but at that promotional level where you're on top, and you say, listen, every fight I have on TV, I'm going to have a woman fight on it. That's the only way it's going to change. I'm not putting it on your shoulder, but I'm throwing it out there. But talk to me about some of the challenges you faced as a woman who happens to be promoting? You mentioned your mentor, Uncle Russell, and that's been a big help.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are challenges.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You're a woman, you're young.
Yeah, and you know, I guess you get it on both ends.
Right.
I can remember when I first started with Russell, and at the time, like, Jones was, you know, one of the more popular fighters in Philly at the time, and I can remember being at one of his media days and just sitting by the ring and watching him. And I am such a sucker for good footwork, and I was never a fan of Mike's footwork. And I can remember somebody saying something behind me about, why is this girl sitting next to the ring watching his feet so much? And I just kind of like turned around and just looked. I have no idea who it was. All I know it was an older gentleman. And instead of turning around and saying, well, you know, this is what I don't like, you know, kind of, I just sat there and let him talk. And then either Doc or somebody came up to me and we started talking about what Mike was doing inside the ring and what he could do better, what he was doing right. And then out of nowhere, the guy that was just asking why I was paying attention so much wanted to have a conversation with me. So I think I think the hardest thing is the first impression.
Okay.
Once you get past that, I haven't had many issues. Like, even when I first started with Russell and I started going into different gyms, and you know, off the bat, people were kind of like, who is this girl? Where is she coming from? You know. But once I started having conversations with people and, you know, wasn't scared to voice my opinion, it didn't matter anymore. Now, when I go out to work events out of town, and I think I battle more of the age problem than the woman problem, because there are a lot of women behind the scenes on a lot of the big promotional companies, and I do deal with them, you know, day in and day out, depending on what company it is. And I think off the bat they kind of think, you know, who is this person? She's like 22 years old, which I'm 27 now, but everybody loses that. But I think that they still see me as a quote-unquote kid. Okay. And it's hard for them to take me serious. And, you know, I've been through it with some of them, and after an event, they're like, well, you know, you really are on top of what you're doing. You know, you really, their whole opinion changes. So I think the hardest thing would definitely be the first impressions on both ends.
I think you cleared that hurdle so nicely in Philadelphia, because you talk to people and the first thing they say, she's a tough negotiator. Well, that's what you get for having a preconceived notion. Yeah, for sure. And even you know, I'm really interested in a lot of the women that did it before me. Like in either November or December, I went out to dinner with Russell and Don Chargan, and I got to pick Don's brain about Eileen Eaton. And you know, Eileen is somebody that I wish I would have been able to meet. She's by far, if I could meet anybody, it would have been her. Okay.
So I try to pick the people's brain that spent the most time with her, and that I can get stories from, and try to learn from things that she did, because she made it when nobody else was making it at all.
What has been the biggest lesson you've learned in boxing?
Not to fall in love with a fighter. That's 100%.
What do you mean by that?
In a sense of getting them, I guess that could be taken more one way, but in a sense of when any promoter sees a fighter coming up and you really fall in love with the way that they fight, the way that their whole demeanor is, you know, it seems like nowadays, and there's plenty of fighters that I deal with day in and day out, so I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but loyalty is so hard to come by.
No. I've been with my same trainer since I'm 15. We're in the gym here every day.
But there's been fighters that I've tried to work with in the past and really help them out in a sense of not even just inside the ring, but outside the ring, when it comes to getting them exposure with different media outlets and things. And, you know, they come in the week later and they're done fighting, or they sign with this person, or, you know, they're no longer showing up to things that I've scheduled for them, and it just kind of really hits you hard because you're like, okay, I'm taking time out of my day-to-day life to help you get exposure within the media or to get you a fight, and then you have no interest in actually going through with it. And it's happened to me on more than one occasion. So I've learned that, you know, not to really, when I find a fighter that I really enjoy working with, not to get too excited about them, because it seems more often than not they change over time, and it sucks.
I was driving here this morning, and I listen to all the genre of music.
So do I.
Everything. You name it. Even our native Australians playing the didgeridoo. I listen to everything. And I was hearing a song, Little Kim and the Lox, which was released July 13th, 1998. Money, Power, and Respect, the Key to Life. Now, she sings Money, Power, Respect, the Key to Life, and DMX comes in with his, and Jadakiss. It's one of the best rap songs ever put together, and everything. I didn't mean to digress, but she said money, power, respect is the key to life, and we can have a discussion on that. What is the key to boxing or boxing promotion? Is it money, power, respect the key to boxing promotion, and your Uncle Russell will be cutting an album soon?
You know, I never really thought about it. I never really sat down and said, hey, what is it? But if I had to think off the cuff, I would say being a smart business person.
Being a smart business person.
Because this is no longer just a sport.
Okay. And
unless it ends up getting back to being more a sport than a business, you're not going to make it if you make decisions based solely on the sport. And it sucks that it's that way, but that is the way it is right now.
July 1921, Jack Dempsey fought heavyweight champ Jack Dempsey fought George Carpentier in Jersey City. They built the stadium, Tex Ricker, the promoter, wooden stadium, 90,000 people. What would it take to get that type of crowd in Philadelphia today?
These guys that are actually making it, they have to come back to Philly. They have to fight in Philly. You have to fight in your hometown. I mean, for example, Jesse Hart could be fighting on the Crawford Lundy undercard in February. He made the decision. It wasn't Top Rank's decision. It wasn't his management's decision. It wasn't our decision. He made the decision to pull himself off the HBO card. And when you ask him, he says, I want to fight at home.
Okay.
He wasn't going to be on TV on the HBO undercard anyway. Yeah, you would have been in front of the HBO, team, and they would have got to see you work and see what you have going on. But it was more important to him to come home, fight in front of his fans, give his fans an opportunity to see him, especially when he's defending his titles. It's just a matter of wanting to be here. Because if these fighters wanted to be here, they would be here. But a lot of them either are with management or advisors or promoters that don't want to bring the fights to Philly. Now, Philly is going to be a really hard market to get into because we are a sports town. It's not like going to Omaha the way Crawford can sell at that venue. You're not going to find somebody like that in Philly unless they have a personality of a Floyd Mayweather, in a sense of talking in front of the media all the time and these media outlets wanting to jump on board. But right now, the media outlets have no interest in it because they'd rather pay attention to, what's going on with the Eagles. You don't even hear anything about the Sixers or the Phillies right now, or the Flyers for that matter. Everything is Eagles because we're a football town. We're not a boxing town anymore, unfortunately.
I think we're a boxing town. We'll always be a boxing town.
We're rooted that way.
We are. It's just that the mainstream media isn't covering it. But I applaud Jesse coming to his hometown. And from a selfish standpoint, I just think many people miss the Jimi Hendrix experience. I think it's time for everybody to experience the Jesse Hart experience, which will be rolling through town. So I'm happy Jesse's fighting here. Philly.
Me too.
There's a statement that was made, and I just wanted to get your opinion on it. One night I was watching, I think it was HBO, and a trainer who will remain nameless said the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life when he said Oxnard is the capital of boxing. I thought it was ridiculous, asinine. Someone needed to slap him because we know Philadelphia is the capital of boxing.
For sure.
Your comment on that statement?
I agree. As much as I don't think we're a boxing town right now because of the media, this is where all the history is. This is where, everything was built from. If a fighter's coming out of Philly or they're coming out of Atlanta or California or Texas, chances are the kid from Philly could fight a little bit better than the other guys. It just is that way because we have a lot more fighters than most of these other cities. Now, the fact that the media doesn't get behind it here, there's really not much you could do about it until we come along with fighters that want to do media opportunities, which a lot of fighters just, they don't like that. They don't like the busy schedule of having this meeting, that meeting, having 15 different media outlets reaching out to you or going out and doing different things within the community all during camp.
Let's talk about the ones who love doing it. Steve USS Cunningham.
Yes.
I called that man one morning just to speak at a junior high school in West Philadelphia. Steve was there. Jumped on it. Always willing to help. Jesse Hart. Always open to the media. Hank Lundy. Give Hank a mic and it's showtime. Julian Williams. I think Tevin Farmer.
Yeah.
Joey DeWaco.
They're around.
Amir Mansour. We can go Ray Robinson. We have so many fighters, and I believe all these people are open to media opportunities.
Yeah.
I just think for some reason the media has just ignored Philadelphia. It's like they're trying to drive us out of boxing.
I don't know what it is. I think that they just, even in a sense of from my end, when we go to put events together, and there has been plenty of times that we've tried to get in other venues, and they've just told us, we don't do boxing. They do MMA, but they don't do boxing. And there's, what are you gonna? You can't argue with them. You could tell them, you can invite them to your events, which we do. You could tell them, Russell's been doing this since 1969 and has never had an issue with not one of his crowds. You can lay the facts on the table, but if somebody doesn't want it in their building, you can't force it upon them. And I think that with the city the way that it is and being so hype on what's going on with football, boxing just gets lost. The same way that the other sports do. Now, if we had somebody that was in the media's face all the time, it might start to change.
Jesse Hart.
Yeah. he's trying. He's getting there.
Okay. For me, I just think it's great that you're doing what you're doing.
Thanks.
It's impressive. I have to tell you that from the time I've met you till now and hearing all the stories and what you've been able to do and accomplish, and you're just jumping over hurdles and you're making things work. You're doing a lot. I mean a lot. How much longer, or is this your life?
As long as I can make it my life.
Because, Uncle Russell said to me 6 years ago, I'm getting out of the boxing business, I'm slowing down. I'm like, okay.
He's not going anywhere.
That's like Bob Marley telling me back in '76, after this year, I'm getting out of the reggae business. It's never going to happen.
He's not going anywhere.
Right.
He could think he is, but he's not. I do a really good job of trying to shut off boxing when I'm around my friends and family that aren't interested in it. And I think that gives me my little bit of time away that I guess people need from being so engulfed in things.
You shut off
I shut off my phone and I don't make
from being around boxing. Oh, you know what I did?
What?
I got rid of anybody I'm associated with who doesn't love boxing.
Oh, that might cut my brothers out of the mix here. I might cut some family out, so okay. I can't exactly do that. Now, on the flip side, everybody around me is very supportive of what I do, even if they don't have an interest in sitting down and watching fights with me on a Friday or a Saturday or a Tuesday night. But when it comes down to my events and what I'm doing, I have friends and family that have never sat down and watched a fight outside of when they've helped me, put my event together or work with the events. And I'm lucky that I have people like that around me. So as long as I can make this work, I'll do it. And even at that, I've said time in and time out when I was getting started, and I wasn't really in a position that I wanted other jobs because I wanted to have kind of like a fallback plan, things like that. And it's to the point now where I'm like, you know what? If it doesn't work out, I'll figure it out when it doesn't work out. I'm not trying to have something to fall back on. It's either gonna work or it's not, and I'm not gonna waste my time thinking, oh, it might not. So as long as I can stay, I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere. I might fly under the radar here and there. I'm not somebody that I pay attention to what's going on the national scene. I pay attention to what's going on the local scene. But, every single old timer that I've interacted with has told me to listen to those around me more than speaking. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to kind of build my relationships, especially locally, more than anything, because, there's been people that have asked me, oh, will you move out west? Will you do this? I have no desire on leaving the city, none at all.
You sound like me, Brittany.
I'll stay right here, right where I like it. I'll stay in my own little spot.
I do my homework and I talk to a lot of people in Philadelphia. And two things when we talk about you, your strength.
Hopefully good things.
No, good things. If I had to describe you as a fighter based on all I've compiled, you're a hybrid Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns. Someone who's extremely smart, but a killer like Hearns. And they say your biggest strength is because you're really bright. And if people fall asleep on you, then they're going to get knocked out. What do you see as your biggest strength?
I would probably say you kind of hit the nail right on the head. A lot of people, I don't think, realize my background too much, and I think that they just think that I'm somebody who got lucky and started out with Russell and here I am. But there's been plenty of trainers, managers, fighters that have tried to pull one over on me, and I don't hesitate to put them in their place. Right. Because you're not going to treat me like that. If I don't allow my family to treat me like that, a stranger's not going to treat me like that. So I pick up on things pretty quickly, and I'm quick to know that you can't cut somebody off in this business because you can't burn bridges. However, I could be, talking to you every week, or I can talk to you when I run into you. And I'm good at kind of breaking down when I have a bad feeling about somebody or something, just kind of going from, okay, we were friends, to now, I'll see you when I see you.
You know how I deal with people who disrespect me?
How?
The Iceberg Slim method. I carry around a little thing of talcum powder, and when they do it, I put some in my hand, like Iceberg Slim. You know who Iceberg Slim is, right?
No.
He was a pimp.
Okay.
So I put a little talcum powder when they disrespect me, throw it in my pimp hand, and I slap them.
I like that answer.
Yeah, put some talcum, carry a little thing of talcum powder in your purse. When someone disrespects you, especially a fighter, pour some in your right hand and slap them. They'll get the message. But
and they won't forget it either.
And then call me because we will be defending a lawsuit. But you have the longevity. You're with a Temple grad, a fellow Temple person, Russell Peltz, who started in 1969, which is unbelievable when you sit down and talk to him. And it's like the mantra has passed to another Temple person, and you're just going right through boxing. And you guys are doing a lot, and you have done a lot. What has been the biggest challenge thus far, besides the venues and the fighters falling in love with the fighter?
I would say slowing down.
Slowing down.
A lot of people ask me, when are you going to run your next show by yourself?
Okay.
Well, I can do that, but why would I want to? I have a lot to learn, and I learn a lot from Russell day in and day out. And now we're working a lot with Michelle Rosado, and we work a lot with Joe Hand, who
Raging Babe, Michelle Rosado.
And I work a lot with Joe Hand Jr. and Joe Hand Sr. I work actually in their offices a couple of days a week, and I'm learning from people that have been through it already, and that all have completely different outlooks on the sport and do different things day in and day out. So I'd rather continue to learn and kind of apply it the way I want to apply it over time.
Over time. That's a good way to look at it. I have to ask this question because I ask everyone. It's a standard question. Who's your favorite fighter of all time? Mine is Tommy Hearns.
That's a hard question. I've always loved to watch what I can find and read about Willie Pep.
Oh, the great Willie Pep.
He is somebody that I find fascinating. And everything I've ever seen on him, it's just phenomenal to me. Mm-hmm. Now, in recent months, I've been watching a lot more of George Benton.
Oh, Georgie Benton?
So I would say that they're kind of my two, but I have to go on. I have two more that I just got to touch on.
Go ahead.
Bernard Hopkins has been one of my favorites since I was a little kid.
Okay, the Executioner.
But Mike
or
Tyson,
the Alien.
Yes, Executioner more than not. But Mike Tyson's the one that really, I would say, made me fall in love with the sport. I can remember being a kid, and I was always a big hockey fan. And my dad he had to work one night, and Mike Tyson was fighting Buster Mathis. And he wanted to see the fight, but he couldn't because he was working, so he asked my mom to watch it. So that meant that I had to watch it. And I was not a happy camper. Okay. I wanted to watch the Flyers game. I wanted no parts of it at all. And ever since then, with that following weekend, I had my dad hang a heavy bag at the house and a speed bag, and it was like, that was all she wrote. That was it. That was it for me. So I would say they would have to be my four.
Okay. Name a famous boxing person you grew up watching or you knew about and you met. For me I remember the first time I met Benny Briscoe. I didn't know whether to genuflect. I didn't want to wash my hand because I was just in awe of Benny Briscoe. I had read so much. Then Joe Frazier, the amateur fight. I'm in the locker room and Joe Frazier's there. And growing up as a kid in Jamaica, I thought Joe Frazier was Jamaican. So when I met Briscoe and I met Joe Frazier, it was, oh my God, can't wash the hand. Who had that impact on you?
Believe it or not, Don Elbaum.
Don, the legend Elbaum.
Yes. I think it was a mixture of things. I think it was the fact that I always knew who he was, because if you follow the sport at all, you can't not. And I'll never forget, it was the night that, I'm pretty sure it was the night that Kennedy fought Rodriguez at the Blue Horizon. Mm-hmm. And he had walked in just to...
Tian Kennedy. Okay.
Yeah, but Don walked into the office and I was in the back, and although that was Russell's show, I was working with Vernoka at the time. And when Don walked in, it was as if all the other interns had no idea who he was. They had no interest in who he was. And when he walked out, I turned to the kid next to me. I was like, do you know who that was? Do you realize that he's like a legend? Right. And it was like huge to me. So I ended up having a good conversation with him that night, and I love hearing from him now. Now I have a great relationship with him. But I was kind of like starstruck, for lack of better terms.
I used to show up at the Blue Horizon when I started covering fights in 2007 early, mm-hmm. just so I could sit and talk to Don Elbaum. And for those who don't know Don Elbaum, you got Don King started in boxing, matchmaker, promoter. He actually
Jack of all trades.
he actually had a fight once. He was promoting and an opponent fell through, and Don threw on his stuff and got in the ring with Chris Bird's father. And
He's got some good stories.
yeah, I've heard if you show a picture of Don Elbaum in the Sahara Desert to some of the nomads, they will recognize him. Everybody knows Don Elbaum.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Don Elbaum.
I never really had that. Like there hasn't really been a fighter that I've met and was like, wow, I can't believe I met him. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just I don't know if it's just to a point to where to me I don't really I'm not a celebrity type of a person. Like if somebody huge, like if Beyonce walked in the room, I kind of would just be like, okay, to me, it's just another person.
Right.
So, but the only time I can ever remember in my entire life being like, wow, I can't believe I just met that person was Don.
Okay. I'm not a celebrity person. Our culture in Jamaica is not celebrity struck. You walk around, Usain Bolt will walk around, people don't paparazzi. We don't do that. But I must say, I can't wait till the day I meet Tommy Hearns, because I thought we were separated at birth because I copied everything. But that's a good one, Don Elbaum. And Don is still around.
Yeah.
He's still around.
Just talked to him last week.
Man, that's a good one. If you weren't, I have to ask you, because you majored, what did you major in at Temple?
Sport and rec management.
Okay. If you weren't in the boxing business, what would you be doing?
I would want to end up running a rec center.
Man, why?
You know, I guess in like 2006, 2007, probably up until like 2009, I used to coach softball in
You played softball?
my whole life. I just stopped
See,
last year.
I never knew that.
Yeah,
No.
my whole life. I just stopped last year because I broke my nose and that was it. I was done. I went to a couple fights and everybody's like, what happened to you? It has nothing to do with boxing.
No, that's what people are going to assume. That
Yeah,
you were
right
in the
away.
ring.
And just to see the way that you help these kids out, it just, there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. So without a doubt, that's what I would want to do.
And this is a Chris Toney question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have to ask that one.
Still involved in what I'm doing. Still running shows, still trying to stay as local as possible. To me, it's more just continuing to build something. I can't say that in 5 years I'm going to be, running shows every other month or doing this or doing that, but all I know is that I want to keep doing what I'm doing and keep building what I've already started. And one thing I can say is hopefully I have a much better relationship with the amateurs in Pennsylvania, because in, I would say, the last year or so, I've seen a lot of things that I've wanted to kind of be involved in that way. So that's a big change that I would say in the next 5 years. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll still be just as involved with the pros,
Okay.
but I have a newfound love for the amateurs.
Brittany, we covered, let me see, we covered who's your favorite fighter, where you'd be in the next 5 years, but I have to ask this question. What's your ideal matchup in boxing?
Right now, it would have to be Danny Garcia against Ray Robinson in Philly.
The new Ray Robinson?
Yes.
And WBC welterweight champ Danny Garcia?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think Philly versus Philly always worked. It's something that they could bring back to the city. I think I know that Danny to the media is on another level, in a sense of he's already a world champion.
Right.
And I don't take anything away from him on that. However, there is other welterweights that are, also on that level that don't get the exposure that I wish that they could. And Ray is one of them. And the fact that they're both here, they're both in Philly, I think that that's something that could take the media and get them interested in this sport, in this city, and could put us back on the map.
Man, first we had Amir Mansour, Steve Cunningham, great fight. Amir Mansour, Joey DeWaco, huge fight. Mm-hmm. Danny Garcia, Ray Robinson. How do you see that fight unfolding? It's signed, it's happening, they're in the ring.
Well, I can't go against Ray ever, so that'll make things nice and simple. But even beyond that, I always give the southpaw the upper hand.
Okay.
So I think that as good and as strong as Danny is, I think that Ray's got a jab that most fighters don't, and he can control a fight from beginning to end with that.
Man, now you have me thinking. I definitely would love to see that fight, Danny Garcia and the new Ray Robinson. That would be a great fight.
I thought so too.
Okay. How much do you think about your responsibility as a woman, as a young person in boxing? How much do you think about the responsibility as a role model?
I don't really think about it until somebody asks me about it.
Okay.
You know, I was always taught to just kind of carry yourself inside the house the same way you do outside the house, and you know, I've always been the same person. I'm always, you know, laid back, kind of. I'm not somebody that wants to be all in your business. I'll listen to what you have to tell me. And there's been times that I've met people, or I go back to Temple sometimes to speak to classes, and you know, people will be like, "How did you do what you did? Like, what?" I just tell them the truth. I just took a risk. You know, the worst thing that was going to happen was it wasn't going to work out, and in my situation, it did. Now, granted, it worked out, but there was things that happened behind the scenes that nobody knows about. But you don't need to show everybody what failures you go through. You might go through personal failures that, you know, change your entire outlook on things, but sometimes nobody knows that. So for me, it's just a matter of continuing to carry myself the same way I've always carried myself. And when people are interested in knowing the background, the whole backstory to everything, giving them the time to tell them the way I went about things, and, you know, trying to help or teach people that it's really about taking risks and kind of going with your gut.
Floyd Mayweather claimed that he has retired. Who's the next big thing in boxing? The next megastar?
Megastar?
Megastar. When I say megastar, 1.5 million pay-per-view buys or more.
Now, when you say next, does that mean it has to be within like 2 or 3 years here?
Yeah, next 3 years, 5 years. My British fans believe it's Anthony Joshua, and by all accounts, I tend to agree with them.
See, I'm thinking more on the Terence Crawford or Felix Verdejo. I would say Verdejo, but I think he needs a little bit more than 3 years to get there.
You're saying Crawford? He's going to lose on the 27th to Hank Lundy. So how's Crawford? So you're saying Terence Crawford or Verdejo? Crawford lose on the 27th.
My gut was saying Verdejo, but since you put me on a time limit, I can't say because he's so young, but I think he's developing well. I think that in his last 2 fights, we've seen him react in situations where it could have really tested him, and he reacted the way he should have reacted. And he's great with the media. You know, the island is 110% behind him. New York's 110% behind him. You know, when he came to Philly, he sold out Philly with no problem. So I think that he's it. If he would be my pick if I was kind of betting on somebody out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, Omaha believes it's Terence Crawford, and maybe a year ago I would say it's Crawford and Verdejo, but then Crawford's getting hit by the hammer on the 27th.
Yes, he is.
And he hasn't been hit till he's been hit by the hammer.
For the record,
I don't see him surviving that fight.
I do want to see Lundy come out of that fight with a victory.
He's going to. I'm betting my house on it.
I hope he does.
And I don't plan on being homeless. But I like Felix Verdejo. I spent 2 months in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. Verdejo is huge. He's huge.
Yeah.
He's huge in Puerto Rico.
And they do great things with him. Like, for example, the kid can barely speak English, but guess what? He's been taking classes nonstop so that he can speak English. Mm-hmm. So, and you know, he's all for it. He's not complaining, oh, I don't want to go to school, I don't want to. No, he's taking classes because he wants to communicate too. So I think that it's him, you know. He's got a Hall of Famer, I guess, in November when I was out in Vegas for the Cotto Canelo fight. I was hanging out with Bill Kaplan. And, you know, he had a couple things to say about fighters in a sense of what really sells and what doesn't, and they're things that I didn't really think about. And when I think about the guys who are on the cusp right now, you know, Verdejo's fallen into every single one of those things that built people into a star.
It's big, and what a lot of people don't know is that Verdejo used to compete in Philadelphia as an amateur. He did. His cousin, actually, Verdejo has a cousin, Brandon Pizarro, an amateur, who's really good.
I'm very familiar with that.
Who's really good.
Very familiar with him. I remember when he came to the gym and he was like this big.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I would agree. He has everything. He has the blessings of Fearless Trinidad. He's tall. He can fight. Good-looking kid. Yeah, I would have to bet on Verdejo. Verdejo.
That would be my pick right now.
Yeah, he's going to be huge. We're about to wrap up here. I see Chris Tony over there. What would you like everybody to know about Brittany Rogers? I've always wanted to do this interview. I just think you're so impressive as a boxing promoter, as a Temple grad, as a human being, as a woman. I'm always impressed by people who have a dream, who are really smart, who can take something from here to there and continue doing it with a passion. And you're everything I've heard. And I just want to say this publicly. I congratulate you, I applaud you, I'm cheering for you.
Thank you.
And you're making a difference. What would you like to tell our fans about Brittany Rogers, the youngest female promoter ever in professional pugilism?
I guess just that I want to get to know as many fighters, managers, promoters, advisors that there are in this game. So whether you're somebody that thinks that I won't do business with you or that I will, I'd rather have a conversation and figure it out from there. Don't go off of based of what you've heard. If it's negative and if it's positive, then reach out to me because I want to get to know everybody.
You know people watch this, Brittany, all over the world. How can they reach you? I'm going to make sure Chris Tony puts up your website, your contact information, but how can they reach you? Is there a Bam Rogers hotline or something?
I would say Facebook or Twitter would be the best two ways to probably get a hold of me, or Instagram. Okay. On Facebook.
What's Instagram? I'm only on Facebook.
Instagram's nothing but pictures.
Okay.
Where you see a lot of my dogs if you go.
I'm just being funny. I see people with pictures, but I'm only on Facebook.
On Facebook, Brittany Rogers, and on Instagram and Twitter, Bam Rogers.
Bam Rogers.
Nice and simple.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
You too.
Thank you for coming down here on a Saturday. We appreciate it. It's been quite a really good conversation.
All right, great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, boxing fans, there you have it. Brittany Rogers, or Bam Rogers, Temple grad, who decided to be a boxing promoter her senior year at Temple University. I can remember my senior year at Drexel University. I was sitting back in the Cree Student Center having fun, skipping a few classes and joking. This lady was working on her career, and she has been a huge success in Philadelphia and in the boxing community. Continue to watch Boxing 396. Have a great day and take care.
I'm trying to ice my whole casket when I'm gone. Pull up with class on the dawn. Once I meet him, I greet him. Kiss his feet for freedom. Tell him thank you, Lord. Cause on earth I was getting bored. Now resurrect me back to this cat or sheep. So I can make the sound and get back the cats that's weak. 230, 6'2". Me bugs for you, that's like a cat versus a pit bull. Gun, no flip bull. Keep hunger and plan for the future. Cause you figure you gonna be older. Way longer than you gonna be younger. Key to life, 1 pound.